Is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme? If you clicked on this video, you probably want to know, is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme or not? We're going to cover that in today's video, so make sure to stay tuned and let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Quantum Resistant Ledger channel, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. In today's episode, we are going to be covering and discussing the all-important question today is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme? Is it a Ponzi scheme? And with me for today's episode is our Director of Outreach at the QRL, Michael Strike. Strike, it is good to have you with me in discussing this sort of debated topic, whether it be on crypto Twitter. It's good to have you with me.
Yeah, thanks. We'll go over pyramids, and this is kind of like a follow-up on our video over Ponzi schemes. That one seemed to get a lot of feedback and a lot of views, so organically it seems to make sense to, okay, let's cover pyramids.
Great. Well, the part I want to cover first before we discuss and go into the question of is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme, I kind of want to just lay out the book definition of a pyramid scheme. I know most of you are familiar with pyramid schemes or Ponzi schemes in different senses, but a pyramid scheme in a sense is the initial schemers are trying to recruit other investors that will continue to recruit new investors over time with the promise of either maybe it's passive income, you buying product initially, maybe it's like selling knives, selling vacuums. And we're all familiar with, MLM or multi-level marketing. These are different costumes within pyramid schemes. And it's a little bit different than a Ponzi scheme, which a Ponzi scheme is a little bit different. The perfect classic example would be, Bernie Madoff. He was the, managing capital for a lot of people over a longer period of time. And then the scheme was brought on after the fact of, whoa, this is a big scheme going on. That's a Ponzi scheme. But I just want to kind of just definition. I wanted to define first, what a pyramid scheme, what a Ponzi scheme is. And with that, I want to ask you, Michael, is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme? Let's dive right into it for the people viewing, because a lot of people probably came here from searching, is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme? So we all want to dive into this.
Yeah, so one of the main arguments on this is that the Bitcoin network is continually reliant upon new people buying in, and that eventually it'll collapse in price as the new buyers eventually get exhausted. That's probably one of the most common arguments that I hear. So I guess first off, pyramids are schemes. They don't fit into classifications such as money, property, or an asset class. Right? These are schemes. They're not. They're neither of those three things by definition.
Yeah.
So they're not like an asset. We're an asset class or money. Bitcoin, for example, you can enter and exit, and potentially for a better position. If you're in a pyramid scheme, you enter your position, and that's where you live into perpetuity. So first off, that's one reason. Second, pyramids require recruitment. Bitcoin participants, people that are in the net, that purchase Bitcoin are encouraged to recruit other people. If they do so because they want to. In a pyramid scheme, the subs that you recruit directly affect your bottom line. And Bitcoin's market cap is so huge and just doesn't work like that. If you convinced your entire family, Ryan, to take their life savings and put it into Bitcoin, you wouldn't affect the market cap at all, unless you've really been holding on to me on your degree of affluence.
Yeah. We're gonna rewind back 10 years to 2011. I'll have them put in heavily then, and then we'll be a little bit more of a market whale, so to speak. But a follow up to that I want to ask is, and this isn't just coming from me. This other people I've seen this, so I just kind of want to whether cover it or debunk it. What would you say to someone that would ask the question about, well, what about the people that came in at $1 or $10 or even 10 and 1,000 when it was ebbing and flowing in those prices? What would you say to them? Were they lucky, or did they get in on the top? How is this in relation to if someone ties the early people getting the benefit of getting a 1,000, 2,000x return, or were they lucky, or what's your distinction here?
Everyone always says this: if you bought Bitcoin for $1 or $100, even $1,000, no one ever talks about how you would have sold at the 5x, at the 10x, at the 15, at the 20. Back in the and even if you really did, then you're obviously a financial savant. If you really did keep Bitcoin, for years and years and years. But back in the very early days, the sentiment was really, really different. It was more like gold in an arcade game than something that had actual value. The truth is, a very, very small percentage of people actually held on and mined in those early days. And of course, those are the ones that make the stories. Those are the ones that make the news. And for the people that get in early, if you can handle 50% drops in one day and still hold on to something that's speculatively, then you deserve that. You quite frankly deserve that reward. And especially if you were able to put something into Bitcoin, not only because of the volatility, but because of how speculative it was at the time. So as Dan Held over at Kraken, one thing he says, everybody buys Bitcoin at the price that they deserve. And this is true because Bitcoin had a fair launch at Genesis. Everyone had the same opportunity to mine it or buy it, and this still holds true today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And the part that you mentioned with the buying in at a certain price, another way to look at it too is people will look back in hindsight and they will say, oh, well, if I only invested X number of dollars way back in the early, I'd be all set right now. But if you look at, let's even say the price, whatever the price is at now, tens of thousands of dollars, if it goes up 100x from here, if you pull out at that time, you're not going to be disappointed in the moment that you pulled out because it's currently at that all-time high. And when people were pulling money out of Bitcoin, whether it happened in 2012 or 13, which in hindsight, it seems like it was way too early, but at the time it wasn't because it started out much smaller than that. So it's just going to continue on over time. And one other part I want to mention that ties back to the pyramid scheme part is if you go back to the Bitcoin white paper and see what Satoshi is laid out in the entire thing, there is nothing that advocates for people bringing new people into the system to incentivize them to further boost up the price later on. And there is no, and pyramid schemes, you have things such as matrices or 8-balls where it's like you bring on 2 people or they bring on 2 people, and then over time that builds. None of that was laid out within the white paper from Satoshi, and that's been true since the formation of Bitcoin over a dozen years ago.
Yeah, I think the closest he said was something along the lines of, and maybe some people will start to think the same way, which will become I'm trying to remember exactly the words, positive feedback loop, something similar to that. Yeah. So, and a little bit more back to a Bitcoin and, the pyramid. Bitcoin isn't structured in a pyramid shape anyway. As new blocks get added to the chain, the ledger moves laterally. It continues. It has a genesis, and it moves. The code moves laterally out. It doesn't function in a pyramid scheme or hierarchy. Everyone on the blockchain is equal to everyone else, aside from their balance or how much they purchased. Anyone can jump in and out, and everyone's treated the same. Everyone is treated the same based on how much hash power you bring in. And you're able to bring in it doesn't restrict anyone from bringing in as much hash power as they want. So the shape is basically a long chain link that gets one link longer, like every 10 seconds or so. And lastly, and this is probably the most relevant, you have to understand your source of information. People generate a lot of traffic calling Bitcoin Ponzi's, pyramids, schemes, scams, and putting cute kittens online, right? So nearly all information online in this day and age is either paid content or agenda driven. That's why big data is such big business. The web is the world's largest billboard, right? And I'll use Peter Schiff as an example. His adherence to physical gold is essentially unwavering, and it has been for many years. I listened to him back in the day too, but he's taken a hard stance against Bitcoin. In contrast to Mike Maloney, who's now pro-crypto and pro-precious metals. But if you watch, Schiff is one of Bitcoin's most outspoken critics. But ironically, his son's an advocate, and watching them argue back and forth on Twitter feels a little bit more like crypto Kardashians than it does actually real life. For the people that put down Bitcoin and blockchain so much, if they don't care about, why are you talking about it? I mean,
Yeah.
Why go on? Why go on and on and on and on? You know, so you have to look. You have to look. It's like everything else. You have to look beneath the surface. How many views did the video get, and what does that translate into revenue? So, in fairness, pro-Bitcoin advocates like Saylor and Max Kaiser logically could and should be held to the same standard, right? Because that's the other side of the coin. Logically, this video should be held to the, could be held to that same standard. But in an era of commercialized misdirection and advertisement, at the end of the day, it's up to each of us to decide what version of reality we accept, whether to go pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto, or the opposite. And like I always say, there's no crying in crypto. So, you can't make a decision and then bitch about it 5 to 10 years later. So.
Yeah, and the part two to mention on top of the first part with Peter Schiff and his son Spencer of they're riding on the coattails of Bitcoin. It's keeping him relevant. There is some merit in some people having some skepticism or at least a bit of caution when it comes to projects in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space, because some people have been deceived in the past with past projects, let's say the 2017 and early 18 ICO craze. If you look now, a lot of them didn't end up turning out to anything. The founders, exited. Some of those people, exited early on, and they're not around building anything these days. Whereas there's a smaller number of projects that are still ongoing, and they're actually doing a lot of important work and development. But if you look at the majority of some of those projects during that phase, it's kind of an iffy time. But lastly, the part where you mentioned with the agenda, we're just like as we're doing with our channel, we're just giving you some opinions based on what we know. And also we want you to form your own opinions based on this. So this video is obviously titled, "Is Bitcoin a Pyramid Scheme?" We're laying out some of the fundamentals of why it's not, but we want you to do your own research, look at some other channels, look at other sources, and form your own opinion. And if you have a strong comment or opinion, feel free to put it below this video. We'd love to hear what you think. But what I want to ask now, Strike, we've clearly defined pyramid schemes, Ponzi schemes. We've covered why Bitcoin is not a pyramid scheme. What I want to ask now is, so if Bitcoin is not a pyramid scheme, what vulnerabilities over the next 1 year, 2 years, 5, 10 plus years down the road does Bitcoin potentially face as a vulnerability moving forward? I think this is a really good segue into this question from here.
Yeah, so for any newcomers to the show, our project is a quantum resistant ledger, and we are purpose-built, industrial-grade, NIST recommended. Our signature scheme is based on NIST's recommendation. And the purpose of this project is to be able to build a blockchain and an ecosystem that's post-quantum secure. So if you're not familiar with the post-quantum cryptography, or essentially the quantum computer threat, or as Y2Q, as we like to call it, take a look at some of the previous videos. We go over Bitcoin's addressing scheme. We go over public and private keys, essentially how those all fit together, and how a sufficiently powerful quantum computer can, in theory, be able to generate a private key from your public key, empty wallets, steal funds, create crypto chaos. And this threat isn't limited to just blockchain. It's universal, respective to asymmetric encryption. So take a look at that. There's also FAQQ.info. That's a good website for resources. We also have a Discord channel. Also www.qrl.org, and I think that about covers it all as far as different resources where people can go and find out more about the project and about what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And along with those resources, obviously, I'll link these real quick. You have the QRL.org, you have FAQQ.info, and even if you go to Google, type in QRL, you can kind of dive in from there. And if it's your first time watching this video, make sure that if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe to our channel at that little bell icon below. It'll be in the bottom right below this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, because each week when we come out with new videos, you'll be the first to know about it, and then you can watch it on your time whenever it's convenient, whether it's a video such as this one where we're covering a broader topic, or if it's a more specific video based on quantum computing or progress that we're doing internally at our project at the QRL. Strike, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us on today's topic and discuss, is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme? And for those of you at home, make sure that you keep those digital assets secure, and we will see you in the next episode. Have a great rest of the day, Michael.
Thank you. You too. See ya.